Hi and welcome to the first project that I'm sharing using products from my very first collection for Stamperia. This is the ring journal. It includes 80 pages and all the pages do have kind of a design. It is quite subtle to get you started, so you can easily overcome the fear of blank page. In here you will find 8 different designs, 80 pages, and all the pages are 180 GSM. That means it has the quality of your scrapbook paper and it's not too thick. That's why for my first example I'm going to play with one of those pages so that I can show you what you can do with it. Always keep in mind that this is quite thin, so you don't want to apply too much of a liquid. Otherwise it may bleed the back or the page may come too wavy. For this type of mediums I do have two other options, the 300 GSM paper journal as well as the stone paper journal, and I will share in the coming weeks projects on those journals as well. So for today I decided to work on this page, and this has the darker of the designs. All the other ones are way more subtle. And although this is a thin paper, there are so many different ways that you can play on top of it. Now I am starting with doing some ink blending, and there are many different blending tools in the market. I'm sure you have a few of them. You can go with the typical foam blending tool. You can go with the brush. You can even go with the sponge that we use usually with the stencils. But any one that you have would work with this ink. This is beautiful to blend. Of course, it depends on the blending tool, because some of the blending tools do take a lot of amount and make it easier so that you don't have to load the brush again and again. So I'm just switching from one to another so that you can see that it doesn't really matter. Whatever you have would work for this technique. And although I started on a brown page, once you add that blue on top, you can see how saturated it is. Somehow it knocks the brown off, so it doesn't look as brown at the moment. Now keep in mind this is a dye ink, which means that it reacts with water, and one technique that I can do on the background is to add some water. These are splatters of water. I'm going to leave them for a few seconds to react with the ink, and then with a paper towel I'm just going to lift some color. Now you will see that this is not going to be very visible at the moment, but once it dries it's going to be even more visible. And this technique really depends on the paper that you are working on. Of course, you won't be able to lift all the color, and definitely not going to see white in the background, since after all we started on a brown page. So here is a close-up look where you can see all those splatters. And here is how it looks on the paper journal, the 300 GSM, where the splatters of course are more obvious since we start with a white background. Another thing that we can do with those inks is to work with them as if they are watercolor. So here I'm applying a little bit of that ink on my glass mat. I'm going to apply water on top, and this is going to give the consistency of watercolor. So with my brush I can go ahead and pick up some of the color and create some splashes of blue. By the way, the color of dyeing that I'm playing with now is cerulean blue, a gorgeous blue color, and all the dye inks by Stamperia are going to be available at the end of August on all your favorite craft stores. Another thing that you can do on this type of paper is to go with acrylic paints. I'm going to apply my acrylic paint with a brayer, and this is milky white acrylic paint. You can definitely apply it with a brush as long as you don't dip your brush into water or too much water. In any case, we don't want to transfer too much of the water on this type of page. Remember, it is quite thin. So I'm doing this technique with a brayer, which kind of breaks the background, creates a more interesting visual texture. And since I do have all that white ink, let's add some water, dilute it, and then add some white splashes on the project. Always keep in mind that depending on the brush that you are playing with to create the splatters, they can be super fine or really big and messy like mine on this project. And here is a close-up look on how the background looks at the moment. You can stop right here with the background and start sticking your focal points. However, I want to show you even more techniques that you can do. So first I'm going to make sure that this is completely dry. And let's do some stamping. This is my basic background stamp. If you have this, you can work on pretty much any project for the backgrounds. I first picked the numbers and I'm working with black shadow. This is the black ink. It's nice and juicy and stamps beautifully over paper, as you can see. But of course you need to keep in mind this is dye ink and reacts with water. I chose to go with dye inks which react with water for my first collection, since these inks give you an amazing variety of techniques that you can play with for your backgrounds. This is really important since you do get tons of techniques just by buying one ink pad. If that was permanent, all you could do was to just stamp and nothing else. You can see I did use them already, not only for blending at the background, but also for watercoloring, for creating my splatters, as well as for stamping now. And I do have a scheduled live on Stamperia TV as well as on my YouTube channel simultaneously on the 6th of July, where you will see tons of ideas on how you can use those inks. I'm going to share lots and lots of techniques. I usually like to introduce a little bit of a circle. On the background there is already some design of circles. However, since I do have 3 options on this stamp set, let me add a few circle stamps here and there. And the background is looking awesome already. If you take a closer look, you will be able to see the designs that were printed in the paper when we started. However, all the stamping, the inking and the splatters that we did really enhanced the design and made it look more interesting. And let's play with Stencil so you get a chance to see a couple of the stencils in action from my new collection. And this is the one with the coffee stains. I'm going to use volume paste. And this is a really thick modeling paste that really dries quickly, but it keeps its shape. The good thing is that it is so thick that it doesn't go underneath the stencil, and it's really easy to work with. So I added a little bit more of that same design at the bottom, and now I'm going with this stencil. You can see it is well loved, and this time I'm going to use only the edge. This is a torn edge and you can place it as far in the page as you want the border to be. I decided to go quite narrow with this border, and I'm going to ink up the edges with shadow black, the black dye ink. For that I'm going with a blending tool and I'm going to apply the ink heavily to cover up completely the whole area. And you can see here the effect that you get. Of course, before placing the stencil on top and doing this technique, I made sure that the previous stenciling with the volume paste was completely dry. The good thing about the volume paste, however, is that it dries quite quickly, so you don't even have to go on top with your heat gun to help it dry. And this is a huge bonus for me since I am a very impatient crafter and I cannot wait for paste to dry. So I continue adding the border all around, and I usually create borders on my journals. I like the way they frame the page and they make it look more finished. So here it is, all finished with the border all around. And it's finally time to play with the focal points. These are the Ephemera pack. I like to take them out of the pack and place them inside the box so that I can easily browse through them. And I'm switching to the bigger focal points so you can see how this background would work with pretty much any of the focal points that you get. So you can either use the balloon, you can use the boots and have some flowers coming out from the inside. You can use the camera, which is the one focal point that I will be playing with today. You can use the open book and have some butterflies coming from the inside of the book, or you can dress it up with the flowers again. But for today I decided to go with the camera, and if you want, you can peel off the backing. Remember, all these ephemera are actually stickers, and stick it by using the adhesive. However, I want to be able to tag underneath the camera other elements. That's why I don't want it to have adhesive all over the back. I am going to use the glue instead. I'm not going to peel off the backing, and I'm going to use the glue on top of that. So this way I make sure that I don't go with the glue all the way to the edges, and I'm able to tag underneath all the rest of the elements. I'm going to repeat the same trick with those flowers and the leaves that I'm going to use to dress up the camera. So again, I'm not going to peel anything. I rather go with the glue. This way I'm not adding glue all the way to the edges and I can tuck underneath other elements. Also, as I'm playing with the glue, you may be able to see through the camera that the glue comes out from behind. I don't really care about that. This is my matte glue, so it's completely safe. It's going to completely disappear and it's not going to leave any shine behind. By the way, the glue comes in this exact packaging, like a pen, which makes it really easy to use. But of course you will get it with a nice label and everything, with all the details on top. This is just the prototype that I have been playing with, that's why it doesn't have a label. Now, to complete my little composition, I decided to add a heart at the center of my lens, just to make it look cuter. And then it's all about the finishing touches. So I grabbed my white gel pen and I'm going over the cutouts, just outlining really sketchy some of them, adding highlights here and there. And this is completely optional, I just love the look, it makes it look more whimsical. And another thing that you can do at this stage is to grab a thin black marker and you can outline the cutouts if you like. I'm going to show you at the end an example of what I mean and you can see and compare how both these techniques look. Now here's a great example of I don't know when to stop with details. So here I decided to go all around the border with my white gel pen and add a white line. This kind of defines the border even more, but it really is unnecessary. It's just me having fun with my craft supplies while listening to my favorite music. So go ahead and do a little bit of doodling if that makes you happy. You will see the close-up photos at the end so you can see the effect that you get. Now in the new collection you will also find rub-ons, and these are the rub-ons that match with the ephemera. I'm going to cut out some of them that I want to use on this page so you can see them in action. And I always like to cut out the images that I want to play with. I can then easily audition them, decide where they're going to go, and then peel them off and stick them down. This is a little bit sticky, you can press it with your finger and then you can use the back of a brush, a bone folder, or even one of those tools with the balls on its end. That's my favorite way to rub them. And then just add some pressure and it's going to peel off beautifully. I did add some of the rub-ons on a couple of areas and you can even layer them if you like. And finally I'm going to add my quote. I decided to go with Stay Focused. I like to print out my quotes. You can easily do that with your printer and just cut it out with your scissors. For ease of use, sometimes I use my label maker. And of course at this stage you can use an alphabet stamp set to put together your own words. And I will show you an example in a bit. Now I'm using a black marker and I'm going to outline the quote, just a little detail that I like to do all the time. And before I call this done, I'm going to add some white splashes. For that I'm going to use a little bit of milk white acrylic paint and just dilute it with water and add the splatter on top. And that's the project for today, using as many of the products that I could fit in one project from my latest collection. Now I'm going to show you another variation. These projects are pretty much the same, however, on the second one I didn't use the blue ink at the background. I kept the paper as it was, but I did the stamping with black, the stenciling with the volume paste, I did the border all around. However, I used a different way to add the sentiment by stamping with my alphabet stamp. You can see how prominent that is, and also I outlined all the die cuts with a black thin marker. So that was the project for today. I hope that you had fun, that you got inspired. You can find the full list of all the supplies that I used down below in the description area. I'm having so much fun playing with my very own collection by Stamperia, and I hope it will bring you joy as well. And of course the most important thing is that the project is Ginger approved. Thank you all for watching.